How's everybody feeling? Hopefully very data happy. We had an amazing session on Monday around greening and recreation. It was really powerful. And today we're going to be talking about how we can have some business related information through data. There's a poll going on about do you live or work or neither in the city of Baltimore? And then there's a second question underneath it. Make sure you answer both of who you are, community leader, with the government, with the another research institution or higher education, because that's the broad swath of folks that generally come to Baltimore Data Week, which is exciting. And we're just going to give a couple of seconds to get people in the door and answering the poll. In the meantime, also, if you did want to introduce yourselves to each other in the chat, if you could put your name and affiliation or anything fun you want people to know about you, because we're going to be together for the next hour plus. So we can all get to know why you're here, or as we interact with each other throughout this session. All right, so I'm going to end this poll, and you can see our speakers can see who's here. Share results. Am I sharing that properly? Everybody can see we have lots of people who live and work in the city, about 28%. 20% live in the city, 16% work in the city, and we have 36% that don't live or work but still love the city. So that's awesome. And we have some students. Welcome to our students. That's exciting. Folks from the government. We have nonprofit organizations, community leaders, and businesses. So welcome to everybody. You can see this is a broad swath of folks, multi-sector grouping, which I think is the best part about Data Week, because we all care about the same thing. We care about our city, we care about neighborhoods, no matter what part of the economy we come from. All right, so today is day 2 of Baltimore Data Week 2022. Let me tell you a little bit about who we are. The Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance, for those that may not be familiar, it's been around for more than 20 years. We started in 1999, 2000 timeframe, and we are the Baltimore partner of the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership, which is organized at the Urban Institute. And if you want to see other cities around the country, there are about 30 of them. Neighborhoodindicators.org is a good place to see where our brothers from another mother in other cities are in the Neighborhood Indicators Network. Our signature project is the Vital Signs Report. Every year, we're putting out over 100 different indicators for all of our neighborhoods in the city. Communities, I should say, we call them communities because they're a little bit bigger than individual neighborhoods. We put them out at that 55 community scale across a wide variety of topics. And this is the BNIA team. You'll see us throughout the week virtually and then in person on Friday. I am Seema Iyer. I oversee the project. Cheryl Knott is our research manager on the line here. Logan Schertz is our research analyst. And we have brand new, or kind of sort of new. In April, we got a brand new developer, Herman Paredes. Welcome to Herman. Brittany McMullen is our real estate data analyst, and even brand newer, if that is a thing, is Ashley Edwards, who's BNIA's first ever civic engagement and communications specialist, and she just started last week. So she's breathing from the fire hose, but doing an excellent job already. So welcome to Ashley. So throughout the week, if you see any one of us and if you have any questions, flag us down. We'll be happy to help. And this is where we are in the week. Baltimore Data Week is probably our signature event. And we're on the second day. We took a day off. Hopefully everybody voted yesterday. And today we're going to be talking about neighborhood business. Tomorrow we have 2 sessions. In the morning, we're going to be learning a lot about Maryland data, and in the afternoon is a kind of hodgepodge of things, including the Pratt Library talking about how to write a good grant, which I know many people need to know. And then on Friday, we are in person back at the University of Baltimore for the first time in 3 years in the law building on the 12th floor. So if you want to come hang out with us with a beautiful view of the city and be inspired, come join us on Friday. And then in the afternoon, in the morning, it will be virtual, and so you can either come on the Zoom call or be in person. But in the afternoon, we're having what's called an unconference, where people get to vote on what they want to talk about. So it's up to you how that afternoon turns out, and we're excited about that. So today, I'm going to turn it over to our excellent moderator. Christina Williams has probably done this every year, I don't know, for 4 or 5 years. Kristina is the executive director of the Charles Village Community Benefits District, but she's also a great member of the BNIA Steering Committee and has been a great supporter of the BNIA project. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristina to tell us a lot about why this is important to organizations like yours, and then we'll hear from our speakers.
Thank you, Seema. I think I've been with the steering committee since 2014, so 8 years now, but I'm always excited this time of year to have these conversations about things that I'm familiar with, and I always end up leaving with more information and learning more things that community partners and organizations are doing. So thank you and appreciate BNIA for putting on this amazing week of data learning. And so welcome everyone for thank you for joining us today. As Seema said, my name is Christina Williams, and I am hopefully going to keep us on time, even though I'm sure everyone is going to have a million questions for all of the great things that they're going to be learning about today. Hopefully today's session displays an analysis that's based on existing data sets. Some of them you may be familiar with, others may be new, primarily using Esri business analysis and census data. And we'll hear from Julia around that. We'll also be learning and seeing a demonstration today about the BNIA Guidepost and the Baltimore Pipeline, which Seema and Armand will be displaying this today. And then we also have an implementer if through Innovation Works, and we'll be hearing from Lamontre later on about that as well. And so hopefully, like I said, we'll all leave here learning a little bit more information about how data can be applied in our commercial districts, in our communities, and identify new ways that we can access this information and advocate for better resources to see a thriving neighborhood across the city, and maybe not in the city, since 36% of you don't live or work here. It's all good. So I'm actually going to allow each presenter, as they begin their presentation, to give a little bit more background information about them, but I'm also certain that eventually we will see bios in the chat. So you can always go back there to get a little bit more information and possibly even contact information later in the session. So we're going to start with Julia Wood, who is a solution engineer with Esri. Julia?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead. Can everyone see my slides? Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. It's really exciting that Baltimore data, like the one day, has expanded to the whole week. So I'm really thrilled to be here and be part of it. And I am a solution engineer at Esri. So I kind of focus on the technology and helping our customers kind of find the right fit for them. And I support the state of Maryland, so agencies across the state. And we typically work in a team of 2. So I work with Anthony Puzo in Maryland, who some of you might know, but happy to meet those of you who I don't know yet. And thank you for letting me talk about business analysts, which can hopefully help you make smarter market planning, site selection, and customer decisions. So we'll dive right in. So Business Analyst is Esri's system for location-based market intelligence. It provides data and tools to help you evaluate locations, understand your customers, and analyze the markets. This provides new insights to help you make those smarter, more informed decisions so you can grow and optimize your business. And I would like to point out, we have a few products here associated with Business Analyst. First and foremost is our web application. So if you're already using ArcGIS online, this is just an additional application to kind of interact with your organization and the data you already have there. And that's what we're going to focus on today. But I did want to point out, we do have a desktop extension. So if you want to dive a little deeper into those market analysis, that could be done with an ArcGIS Pro using that extension. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later as well. And then we also have kind of a sister product to the web application called Community Analyst, which you can use if maybe you're looking at trying to find the best location for maybe a new public library or community center. You can kind of take that demographic information and look at it on that community side. But again, for today, we're going to look at business analysts through that web application. Business Analyst is built on 4 key components. We have our demographic data that you can access to support your workflows. And then we have our maps to help you evaluate the data and understand locations of interest. And then there are analytical workflows that provide insight into customers, sites, or competitors. And lastly, we have reports and infographics to help you easily communicate those market insights. So we'll take a look at these each in detail and then kind of see it live. Business Analyst includes roughly 15,000 demographic data variables to help you understand your customers and markets. So the data is sourced from leading industry data providers, the Census Bureau, American Community Survey, so that you get the most accurate and comprehensive data sets available. So for demographic data specifically, we have current year as well as 5-year projections for US demographic data covering variables like population, age, household income, employment status, and more. Next, we have consumer spending data, which reports expenditures on hundreds of products and services such as apparel, food and beverage, recreation, housing, and healthcare. We also provide market segmentation data that classifies US residential areas into 67 distinct market segments based on demographic and socioeconomic traits. And along with that, we also provide market potential data to help you understand the expected number of consumers that are interested in specific goods, services, and activities. So those are kind of the 4 big areas that our data focuses on, but we do have additional data on points of interest, business locations and summaries, traffic and crime, if you want to kind of take a look at a larger picture. And all of this data is available on demand in the cloud through ArcGIS Online. And you can also access most of them through data packs for you to download and use on your local machine if that works better for your workflows. You can view the data on maps, apply it to your workflows, or use it in those infographics and reports. And you can even append these variables to your existing data sets using data enrichment. So there's a lot here that hopefully will be helpful. And if you are familiar with ArcGIS Online, we do have the Living Atlas, which provides additional demographic data as well. But the data provided here in Business Analyst is just so much more in-depth and detailed. So now for the maps. In Business Analyst, it gives you tools to easily evaluate locations using that map-driven analysis. So you can see here, you can generate color-coded maps to explore variables for your area of interest, whether you're looking at demographic data or maybe consumer spending patterns around a store or an office. You can also apply a smart map search to find areas that meet defined weighted criteria. You can kind of choose different variables that you're looking at to help narrow down a site search and locate those opportunities for you to grow and expand. And then you can also search for businesses and facilities, either by name or in a category, to give you some insight into demand and competition within this particular area. Beyond the data and maps, Business Analyst provides powerful analytic workflows that deliver location-based market intelligence. These workflows are tailored to use cases like customer analytics, market planning, and site selection. They help you apply your data, maps, and location analytics to identify best markets, the right potential growth sites, and more. So for example, you can evaluate sales potential in an area to measure demand, as well as predict the impact of introducing a new store location and assess the impact the market changes will have on performance. You can use site selection to rank and score sites based on multiple weighted criteria to find those ideal sites. And you can even take a look at territory design to look at things like sales regions, franchise zones, or service areas to optimize your market presence. And these are available in that extension for the desktop application that really helps you take a deeper dive if you're really wanting some market insights beyond maybe a site selection and kind of that overview of a general location of where would be best. So again, kind of those differences in the products. The last thing we'll talk about before we go into a quick demo is our reports and infographics. This is my favorite part of Business Analyst because it allows you to share the insights that you've gained from your data and maps and share it internally and externally. So you can create and export reports as printable PDFs or Excel spreadsheets to share with clients and stakeholders, maybe with the public potentially as well. And you can generate presentation-ready infographics to showcase key indicators and information through interactive charts, tables, and maps. So a great way that I like to use these infographics, in addition to being able to print them, is you can embed them in a web page. Maybe you're using ArcGIS Hub or a different application like Experience Builder, and your users can actually click on the different widgets and learn more, which we'll take a look at in just a minute. And we do provide templates to help you get started. There's over 100 that exist. And you can even take these templates and tweak them and then save them as your own to kind of apply for future use as well. So I'm going to go ahead and switch screens. Give me 1 second. Okay, can everyone see my screen again? Awesome, thank you. So if we go back here to our business analyst, to get here, you just go to your ArcGIS Online organization, click on the app launcher and choose business analyst. And let me go back. All right. And when you open it up, what you're met with is this interface, which kind of tells you which set of demographics you're looking at. So up here, I'm focusing on the United States and focusing on the latest and greatest demographic data. You can choose to change that to last year's data as well. Maybe if you want to create multiple infographics or reports to show a comparison between the previous year and this year, but we'll focus on the best that we have right now. And we can go ahead and open up my project. And what we see here is, let me go back. It skipped ahead a little bit. I apologize. There we go. And what we see here is our data of what we have showing. So I'm using that Baltimore neighborhood information that we chatted about earlier. I think it was shown on the intro slide. And you can actually import your own data either from ArcGIS Online or by uploading it to maybe take a look at several neighborhoods at once. You can create a specific site for that. And I even have a tailored geometry here for a particular census tract. So you can kind of choose what level of detail you want to get into and create your reports and even compare different sites to others as well. So if we wanted to take a look at, let's say, infographics for Federal Hill, we can choose which template we want to run on. So if I scroll down, I can actually see my templates that I've created based off of existing ones. And one that's really awesome is the community profile. It kind of gives you a really high level look at who might be living in a particular neighborhood, city, however, whatever level you want to focus on. So here for Federal Hill, I can see the area it encompasses. I can see the median household income, the median home value, and as well as ages. And if I click on this age group, I'll get a quick pop-up to show me what the largest group is. So males between the ages of 30 and 34, as well as the smallest. And you can interact here to kind of see that comparison of males to females, as well as this line here, which shows the comparison right now to Baltimore City. I can compare this information to the state of Maryland or even the United States as a whole. So I can see there's a fairly young population in this neighborhood, which could be helpful if maybe I want to open up a restaurant or a bar. I could even export this infographic from here and print it, as well as the entire one up here. So that's like what I love about it. It's just so easy and quick to pull up these infographics. And one last thing I'll show, because I know I'm running out of time, but if there's anything else you want to look at more deeply, or after this discussion you start thinking about things, definitely reach out to me. I can put my email in the chat and I'd be happy to dive deeper. One of the other things I like here is creating those maps. So this is that smart map search that I briefly mentioned earlier. And it takes variables in a list that you're looking at and can help you select the best place to open up, whether it's a new business or potentially, like I said, a public library or other community resource. So if we take a look at these predetermined lists for population and income, they look at that total population as well as population growth, and compare that to the daytime population as well as household income. So I've created some variables for if I would like to open up a doggy daycare. Let's say I already have a business in Annapolis, but want to expand to Baltimore. I've created this list of different variables. So where the head of household owns a dog, where the population is over the age of 15 and has never been married, maybe single people who might need assistance taking care of their dog while they're at work or out of town, those with disposable income, as well as those who travel frequently. So if I go ahead and click on these variables, it'll bring up all of the locations in my map. Let's go ahead and turn that off. So everything is selected for now because they meet that criteria. You can also, mine set to the current map extent. And this is actually a site that I've created, so I could quickly go to that. So maybe if you're focusing on a downtown area, this is where you could click on that to see this pretty quickly, but I'll leave it at the current map extent for now. Let's say I want where there's at least 100 people who own a dog, at least 400 people who are over the age of 15, who aren't married, who have a fair amount of disposable income, and who took some trips last year. So I can actually already see how it weeded out certain locations that didn't meet that criteria. You know, right here, people don't own dogs, or they're not over the age of 15 who haven't been married. So it's not criteria that I'm gonna really look at. But I can see right here in Fells Point that I have folks who have disposable income, who have dogs, and who travel frequently, who might want to use a doggy daycare. And I can see that surrounding neighborhoods also meet this criteria. And so it might be a good location to think about. I could run deeper analysis on these subsets of neighborhoods to see additional factors to take into consideration and choose the best site for me. So I hope this quick overview of Business Analyst helps kind of get you thinking about how it can help you with your business needs, and hopefully help you not have to start from scratch when navigating some of these workflows. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia. That was a wonderful overview. There was a question that I just wanted to make you aware of. Cheryl and Seema are both on top of it. But Michael was just asking about the ability to pretty much integrate this system with BNIA's CSAs, community statistical areas, I believe is what it's called. Please don't, I've been around for too long to not know exactly what that stands for. But I believe that's what oh, it is, because Cheryl put it in the chat. And then I had a similar question around the same thing, more so around census tract data, and are there any other data sources that this system pulls from to be able to generate the indicators, the over 15,000 indicators that you mentioned?
For the geographies, or just in general?
Just in general for me.
So we definitely, census is the big one when it comes to population, but we do take a look at those ACS, I think American Community Surveys, that's a big one. I know there's more, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I can definitely get that list to you. And basically we don't create any of the demographic data, we're just taking it from these authoritative data sources. Like I know on our Living Atlas, kind of a little bit different, but things like environmental factors come from NOAA. So I believe some of the business information comes from like the Small Business Association. So other kind of more specific and tailored to the business side of things to kind of bring in that market potential. The demographic data I'll have to double check, but it does come from several different sources, but those are the two that I think are kind of the most authoritative that we use.
Thank you. And then you also showed us where we could export and print some of the dashboards. Is there also a way that we can link so if I was able to upload it to a website, is the data linked so that if there's a change, it automatically makes the change on the website as well?
I believe so. I believe the data is kind of always updating. And so anything that you're basing that off of should be reflected automatically. And like I said, I think that 2022 data is within the past month or so. So it's super updated and I'm really excited. I logged in and was like, oh, look, it's even more recent. So
Awesome.
I do see a couple of quick questions. So yes, so ArcGIS Online, I believe for students, I think that sounds right, $100 for an ArcGIS Online subscription. And then I believe the Community Analyst is $100. I'm not sure how that works for students. And then Business Analyst, maybe $500 a year. But you can sign up for free trials of both. I can pop that link in the chat. Maybe if you were interested in this, but not sure if it's the right fit, you could do a free trial of it and kind of see if it'll help support your workflows. So I'll get those links.
Yeah, I know you're probably not in this on the sales side of things, but I'm sure that's going to be a big question for a lot of community organizations here on the cost of being able to access this data. So hopefully we can get back to some folks with links and answers to those questions as well. And then there's another question about if you could add the link to create an online account to the chat,
Yes.
that would be great so that we can have folks start working in it.
Awesome. I'll get those two links and I'll put my email in there as well if there are any additional questions that people think of. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia. Really appreciate that presentation. That was pretty amazing. All right, so moving right along, keeping right on time. We're going to move to Lamontre Randall, who is the Neighborhood Strategy Manager at Innovation Works. Really excited to hear from him today. Handing it off to you.
Awesome, awesome. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Okay. Awesome. Can everyone hear me? Okay, awesome. Alrighty. Slideshow. Okay, so I'm Lamontre Randall. I was born and raised in East Baltimore. I'm very much a community grassroots person. And now I've taken the role as being a neighborhood strategy manager here at Innovation Works. And here at Innovation Works, we're an organization that's attempting to reduce the racial wealth divide by supporting community members with their innovative ideas. We want to produce self-sustainable economies in different Baltimore neighborhoods. We do this in 3 ways. One is by supporting entrepreneurs through our entrepreneur development pipeline. Second is through our neighborhood strategy, where we work collaboratively with a community to solve each neighborhood tough economic challenge. And lastly, we have our strategic initiatives program, where we have programs like our Nature's Colors initiative, which involves supporting the natural dye industry here in Baltimore. Today, we will focus mainly on the neighborhood strategy piece, which I am the lead for. So we value Baltimore City, and everyone knows that Baltimore City is unlike any other city that I know. It is really a city of neighborhoods, right? Each neighborhood has its own unique challenge. The idea of the neighborhood strategy came into a place after years of like on the ground networking and seeing that in order to create real change, we have to tailor each change resolution solution with its respective unique neighborhood. Each neighborhood has its own unique challenges, and we have to always remember that. So my main role is engaging within the community and meeting with folks and seeing what sort of solution is most valuable for that community sector. Which comes down to the community guideposts. With that being said, in order to get communities what they need, we noticed that they needed certain tools. One particular is beneficial data. So we partnered with BNIA to create the community guideposts. This data allows individuals to pinpoint their neighborhood so we can better understand data relevance. And I think one of the most important things also is a free tool for community, right? To utilize. Also, this data is the data used for community guideposts, we believe is not the end all be all, but we believe it's a digestive tool that is really going to be used to help get the community in the right direction, right? It's one good step in the right direction. Also, community can feel more empowered when using the data given to them, right? Some examples include using the data to hold public officials accountable for when they say they are improving crime in the area, and you can pinpoint like, oh, no, you're not. The strategy you're implementing right now, it is not working. And right, so we could test effective, whether a certain strategy is effective or not. People can also use it to pitch a case to foundation or other donors in order to build a case for why they should support your grassroots organization, right? And lastly, one example is folks in the community can use this to maybe pitch to local business leaders to bring a market into the area, because data shows a growth in occupancy, right? That means more potential clients for the grocery store. And as a conclusion, before I pass to Seema, this is a starting point of a conversation of how data can be used for social change. We want people to get to a point where they could double check whether the data really shows what is really happening in their community. We want people to say like, okay, no, that's not the right story. This is the true story, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it to Seema, and hopefully, I know she's gonna give a great demonstration of how to use it, right? So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lamontre. If you do have questions for Lamontre, please do put it in the chat, and if there's a burning question, I'm happy to stop and let him answer it. Questions about Innovation Works in particular, for those of you that might not be familiar. But when Innovation Works came on the scene, was about trying to create and grow entrepreneurs right inside some of our neighborhoods that don't normally see a lot of activity. It was a natural fit for BNIA to be a part of the genesis of Innovation Works, because we can see those neighborhoods from the data perspective, and we understand kind of not just where they are today, but where they've been. And that trajectory is what's really important to an entrepreneur, because you want to get in on something before it explodes, right? Because that's what entrepreneurs do. They get in and they want to take it from maybe a place where it's struggling a little bit, but actually be a part of the solution. So this is our regular website. Again, for those that may not be familiar with the BNIA JFI website, and I will put that in the chat. What we normally do is the vital signs report. And again, this is our 20th edition. You can take a look at a community and get all of the indicators, over 100 indicators for every community, or you can come in here and look at a particular topic. So we do have workforce and economic development, but as a business entrepreneur, and this has things like how many people are employed, what's their educational level, how far do they travel to go to work, that kind of thing. But if you're a business owner, you actually care about much more than just this, right? You care about crime and safety, and you care about housing, and you care about demographics. And so we're trying to figure out a way to answer those kinds of questions that business owners might have, that take these topics and actually segment them in a slightly different way. So all of the data in the guidepost comes from the Vital Signs report. And if you're not familiar with the Vital Signs report, then we will be giving a demo on Friday, but that's a quick overview of our overall website. And what we wanted to do was, again, combine these indicators in a way that answered questions for business owners. So on our regular website, you can come here to the resource library, which is a drop-down menu. And on the bottom is the guidepost. And it's just BNIA JFI guidepost, community-guidepost. And we want to try and help people answer. This is like a wizard, a question wizard. It's going to take you through a couple of different questions, one at a time, so you're hopefully not overwhelmed. But the key was to try and answer two key questions. One is, how's my community doing? So like what we saw in the business analyst, you see that particular point in time. But what you want to know is, again, how that community has changed over time. So I'm going to start off with how's my community doing? And then the second thing we wanted to ask was, I want to compare my community to another community. And how do we compare? Comparing became something to think about. And for those of you that like statistics, we're going to get into creating comparisons. So I'm going to start off with, and I have we do actually have a guide, which I will put in. I'm going to share one thing first. We do have a step-by-step guide as a PDF on how to use the guidepost, which I am going to put in the chat, which I think I remember how to do this. Yes, got it. How to use the guidepost in case you want to download that for yourself for the future or follow along while I'm doing this. All right, back to the guidepost. All right, so how is my community doing? When you come into this, again, this is a little bit like a TurboTax. We're going to ask you one question at a time. We're going to select a community. You can either select it from the map. And to your question, Michael, communities are a little bit bigger than neighborhoods. The city is segmented into these 55 communities, and we have over 270 neighborhoods. So this kind of brings us a little bit out in the scale. So let's say we're interested in Edmondson Village. I'm going to click on Edmondson Village. And down here at the bottom, you'll see that it'll keep a running list of what my current selections are. So far I picked path 1, which is how is my community doing? And I picked my community, which is Edmondson Village. And by default, the years are going to be all years from 2010 to 2020. But in the next, for all year, it will be for all years in this path. In the next path, you can choose which years you want. Okay, so the next question is, what do you want to know about your community? What kind of area of interest are you thinking about tracking? And we have, I can't tell if you guys can see the drop down, but we have growth and occupancy, workforce development, education, real estate market, crime and safety, and equity. And of course, you can pick either one of any one of these. And what we've done is we pulled the vital sign indicator that most serves as a proxy to that broader area of interest. And in this case, indicators can be in multiple things, right? Equity can be both about, African-American employment, but then also it can be in workforce development. So the same indicator can kind of cross over different areas of interest. So I'm going to start with the real estate market. And what happens is that you see the vital signs indicators that we've pulled into this area of interest, which actually crosses over multiple topics in the vital signs report. And you can say, I want to look at all of these, or you can unselect all of these and you can pick just a few if you want, or you can select them all again. But there are things like in the real estate market, looking at tax lien sales, or maybe you don't care about tax lien sales, so you can unclick that. How many permits are being pulled? How many commercial permits are being pulled, demolition, residential properties with the vacant and abandoned housing, and then vacant properties that are owned by the city, median sales price, and owner occupancy. And these are the ones that we pulled to kind of broadly reflect real estate market. And remember, for again, those that might not be familiar, all of these data sources come from local city agencies or local Open Baltimore. So these are pulling directly from what the city's data is. So if we don't like the data, we know exactly where to go back again and figure out who to talk to. All right, so now we're still seeing our current selections, and make sure that you kind of know where you were from your previous steps. And then I'm going to type next, and we are going to get our results. I'm going to make this a wider screen so that they're side by side. Oops, that didn't work. Okay. All right. Too many things open. So by default in this path 1, this is exactly what you're interested in. You're interested in looking at trends. And what happens is that the orange line is my community and the blue line is Baltimore City. So you can look in relation to the city of Baltimore, what is happening in Edmondson Village. And again, from a business perspective, this is interesting because at the beginning of the decade, Edmondson Village had less than citywide average, the rate of properties being rehabilitated. But notice what's happening since then. Edmondson Village now has more than the citywide average in terms of rehabilitation permits. So you can think what is happening in terms of private sector, homeowner and property owner really investment going on in these properties. And that might be something to think about, getting in on this kind of activity if you're interested in this sector. And then we have other ways to look at the same data is in a chart. You can look at, and then you can also just look at the raw data. You can look at all of the data in terms of numbers, and you can see where we have the highest levels. And let me go back to trend. You can go to the next indicator, percent of commercial rehabs. This has fluctuated pretty greatly in Edmondson Village, kind of going up above the citywide average, below. And this whole thing is interactive, and you can download it from here. Not a lot of demolition going on in Edmondson Village, which we wouldn't expect. It's generally a pretty good neighborhood in terms of, the nature of the stock of buildings. Largely because there's very little vacant and abandoned housing in Edmondson Village, about half the citywide average. But notice that it is increasing. So something to think about for that neighborhood, even though it is very low, it's kind of creeping up, something to think about for that neighborhood. And then the city doesn't own many of those vacant, whatever is in Edmondson Village in terms of vacancy, the city owns very little of it. So a lot of whatever vacancy they have is held in private ownership and not public ownership. The median sales price is about half of the citywide average, but then again, also increasing and almost close to the citywide average by 2019. But one of the concerning things in Edmondson Village in particular is the dramatic decline of owner occupancy. Again, from a business perspective, thinking about if you're now dealing with a lot of renters, the kinds of things that they would need, but also the housing insecurity that they might be experiencing because rents can fluctuate where, home ownership rates may not. So in Edmondson Village, we saw a 13% drop in almost 14% drop in owner occupancy over the decade, which is one of the most dramatic declines in the city. All right, now I'm back to the beginning, and you can then change anything. You can look at a different community and for the same area of interest, or you can change the area of interest. Like, let's say I want to look at equity now for Edmondson Village, which tells me percent of residents that are African-American, the racial diversity index, percent of children living below poverty, life expectancy, digital access, and travel time. And then we can do an update. And so we're still looking at Edmondson Village, but we're now looking at a different set of indicators, but the same experience, right? I can see that Edmondson Village has 93% African-American, where the citywide average is 57 by the 2020. The racial diversity index is conversely very low. You need a mix of people to have a high racial diversity index. You have the percentage of children living below the poverty line, and that has gone down dramatically in Edmondson Village, which is great news, and possibly because of that kind of investment that we're seeing. And unfortunately, one thing that's, again, something to think about is that we're having this dramatic increase in the percentage of the population in that neighborhood traveling too far to get to work, too long to get to work, to a 45-minute commute time is now way higher than the citywide average, almost double, where it was not like that at the beginning of the decade. Percentage of people with no internet at home is a little bit higher than the citywide average. Also, thinking about what you might do to address this issue as a social entrepreneur or as a business. Can we do something to increase digital access and reduce this number of people that don't have internet access at home? And then this is Edmondson Village. We have noticed ourselves has had a problem with indicators going some in the right direction, but some in the wrong direction. And life expectancy has gone down in Edmondson Village, and something that we all want to try and change. All right, so that was just path 1. We haven't even gotten started on path 2. So we've gotten to know Edmondson Village pretty well, right? Hopefully these data is telling you a little bit about the trends of this neighborhood, and you're starting to paint a picture of what is happening in the neighborhood. The next thing we want to know is, okay, can we compare Edmondson Village to something else? So far we've just been comparing it to the city of Baltimore in that first path. And so the second one is, let's take our Edmondson Village again, and you can either, again, do it from the map or do it from the drop down. I've grabbed Edmondson Village. Now we can determine what years we want to look at. Do we want to look at the whole decade, or do we want to look at the last 5 years? So let's do 2015 to 2020. There's a lot that has changed in the city of Baltimore since 2015. There's a little bit of a point of inflection of our city, of things that we experienced. And then we can do the same thing. It's the area of interest. So we already did real estate. We already did equity. Let's do workforce development. So this is the percentage of the population that is the teens, the 16 to 19, that are in school and or employed, that they're actively engaged in the economy. Percent of the population that's employed, median household income, number of employees, number of businesses. And again, here we see percent of households with no internet at home was in that equity area of interest, but it's also in workforce development, because if you don't have folks that have internet at home, that's going to be a problem. And so now we want to start to compare. And I want to stay on compare for a second, because the question is, how do we pick which neighborhoods we want to compare to? So there's 3 different options of comparing. Let's say you know exactly, I want to compare Edmondson Village and Bel Air Edison, and I know that that's what I want to do. Well, you can pick your own one. You can pick all of them, or you can pick just a few if you want. And again, whatever you pick here, it will show up in your communities that you would have changed, that you selected. So picking, choosing my own is the first option. And we've done this actually with a couple of different organizations that already are in certain areas, like Innovation Works is in a few neighborhoods. So they know exactly which neighborhoods they want to keep track of and compare over time. And so they can click the ones that they want. For you that might be doing some exploration, you might want to just pick the neighboring neighborhoods. So in Edmondson Village, there were five different communities that touched and are adjacent to Edmondson Village. So this is Allendale, Irvington, Beachfield, Town Hills, Dickeyville, Franklintown, Forest Park, Walbrook, and Greater Rosemont. So you can then compare just literally to your adjacent neighborhoods. And that's an interesting thing to think about of, is Edmondson Village the hole in the donut, or is it actually like a beacon amongst its neighbors? And we know in Baltimore that this unfortunately is true, that even side by side neighboring neighborhoods unfortunately have kind of diverging fortunes. And then the last one, so this is just a simple adjacency calculation, just looking at literally the neighborhoods that touch the one particular neighborhood. And then the last one is choosing a similar neighborhood. And this is done through K-means, cluster analysis of the indicators that were in that domain, right? Median income, no internet access at home, number of businesses. And what the K-means does is tells you which communities in the city of Baltimore are actually similar to Edmondson Village along these kinds of indicators. So lo and behold, Bel Air Edison happens to be similar to Edmondson Village, but so is Beachfield, which is also adjacent, and Allendale, Irvington, but then so is Brooklyn, Curtis Bay, and believe it or not, Canton. which you might not think about when we think about, but if you look at the housing stock in Canton and you look at the housing stock in Edmondson Village, they are actually pretty similar. But so let's go figure out how and why these neighborhoods are similar to Edmondson Village. So now we have that same view that we had in Path 1. And the default here is the bar charts, just because it's a little bit easier to see how and why. Beachfield had an increase in the percentage of the population school age that were employed by the end of the decade. Canton was 100% in both. Canton doesn't have many children in this age range. If we looked at the population charts from Business Analyst, Canton is a little bit of a teenage desert. Edmondson Village also saw an increase. Percent employed, median income, even though Canton has a much higher median income than some of these other neighborhoods, there's other reasons why this is, let me do the trends. So you can see that the indicators tend to group together towards the end, which is why they ended up in a similar range. Although Canton does still seem to be this outlier. So kind of similar median income, total number of employees, Edmondson Village is down here, number of businesses under 50, and then number of businesses, neighborhood-based businesses. These are the things that neighborhoods need, like, and this is why Edmondson Village Shopping Center is a big kind of commercial area in that neighborhood, which is why it's located here. Percentage of no internet at home is similar to some of these others. Canton is down here at the bottom, and then we're back to the beginning. And then again, from here, you can change things. You can change your neighborhood, you can change your years, you can select different indicators, and then you can select different communities. Like, let's say, even though my K-means gave me Canton as being a similar neighborhood, it's not really resonating with me, and so I want to take it out. So you can do that too. And you keep seeing kind of what your current selections are, and you can update. So that is a very quick overview of the guidepost, and we are very much looking forward to you using the guidepost in some of your work. And I'm going to stop for now and answer questions before I move on to our next tool, if there are any.
There was a question, but you answered it by going through the Path 2.
Yes. So the Path 1 is when you really just want to get to know your own neighborhood or the one that you're of interest. And Path 2 is when you want to try and compare neighborhoods.
Any other questions?
Has anybody used the guidepost already? We have Lamontre seems like do you have an example of how you've been able to use it to try and understand something?
There's a question about where the data is coming from as well.
I think I made some examples in the presentation. What we tend to use it for here is a lot of times within Innovation Works, we deal a lot with building up social entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs are different from regular entrepreneurs, right? They want this social sort of community impact. And so we kind of use this data as like impact metrics, right? So people can really see how can they really help with impact in their community and figuring out, okay, I got location over east side. We say we want to go over west. Does it make sense, right? And the data can help prove that or disprove that, right?
So the question is, where is the data coming from? It's all coming from the vital signs, but let me show you literally from a technical point of view where the data is coming from, because it's very exciting. I was just about to go there. So it's powered by the BNIA Vital Signs data. And so if you click right here, you can get to the main website, our main website, which is the Vital Signs report. And this is when you're on our regular website, it's meant for, just exploratory analysis and, maybe not the most technical person, just somebody that wants to look at data. But the actual guidepost is powered by our open data portal. So if you want to come in here to Vital Signs, the Vital Signs open data portal, all of the indicators are here through an API. So let's do no internet. Let's do internet percentage of households with no internet at home. You saw that in the guidepost, but it's being driven by this open data portal. So if you went in here, you can come in here and get information about, how to use our API. The API is driving the guidepost. That's a more technical answer.
And then Stephanie just asked about the base numbers when they're too small for the percentages and their changes, for their changes to be meaningful.
So when you're looking at one neighborhood at a time, like how is change meaningful, right? And that's why it's really important to put it into some context. So even if the neighborhood itself might be having these small changes, if the city is experiencing big swings, then you can see that, oh, this is actually a pretty stable neighborhood in comparison to the city. Or when you're looking at your surrounding neighborhood, you can see, you know, how are other neighborhoods swinging. So that reduction in owner occupancy in Edmondson Village is very steep in comparison to other neighborhoods in the city in general. But certainly in relation to this neighborhood. So that's the way to think about it. It's not a regression analysis, right, where you're actually looking for statistical change over time. But we are looking for relative differences. And that's the best thing about the Vital Signs report to me, and hopefully for the guidepost.
I think it was something interesting that both you and Lamontre mentioned now a couple of times, that while we are having a conversation around data points and numbers, the story and narrative is just as important in being able to share this information within community and to advocate for whether it's changes or for consistency or for just better access. It's really important for us to be able to tell the story as well. So I appreciate you both highlighting that too.
Yes. These numbers are not the community. They are kind of the physiology of the community. And that's the way to think about it. The knowing them helps you kind of understand something about the community, but to actually know the community, you have to do what Lamontre is doing and going in and really understanding the community.
And with that being said, I want to also please anyone, if you have opportunities for me to go and engage and kind of let more people know about this community guidepost, please send me the contact information. I am more than willing to share out and help explain this empowerment tool for the community.
Do you want to put your contact information in the chat?
And then last question from Alicia, who was asking about maybe an expansion in some of the areas that are indicated. And I mean, she's asking about CDC zones. Wasn't that many C's in that that I just added. But from my perspective, benefits districts, main streets, like different things like that, to be able to compare some of these commercial areas. Is there a way that in the future we can have a conversation around expanding some of the locations within the guidepost?
Yeah. So our communities are made up of 2 to 6 census tracts. So we've aggregated census tracts. And actually on Thursday, tomorrow, Herman is going to do this amazing demonstration about how we create these indicators. So please come join. Like, we are excited about his work and we do this. We've been doing it for 20 years. So come see how we create these indicators tomorrow at 3:15. 3:15 it starts. But for Alicia, the way to think about it, or a way to look at the relationships between all these, which I think Michael had the question too, what's the relationship between neighborhoods and communities and census tracts and other kinds of geographies and scale. In the resource library under the map gallery, right? We can have curious about how communities relate to other kinds of geographies. So in this interactive community statistical area map, this is all Cheryl. She does an excellent job of putting this together. You can look at a whole bunch of different geographies. So coming in here to explore Baltimore's geographies, you can then look at neighborhoods versus CSAs or census tracts. And let's go into neighborhoods. And if you did want to kind of zoom into Upton, you can see that our CSA boundary, which is this black boundary, covers, and Janet Allen is on the call, and she's not going to like this, but it does include Heritage Crossing. And she calls me almost annually to make sure someday we're going to get Heritage Crossing its own. But right now, our community includes 3 different neighborhoods. It includes Druid Heights, Upton, and Heritage Crossing. So when you look at the data for this entire area, you're seeing it across all 3 neighborhoods. The planning department puts out data at this neighborhood scale, not on an annual basis, but as with some regularity. I think every 3 or 4 years, they'll put out new data. So if you want data specifically for Upton, you would go to the planning department's website. And I don't know if the CDC covers more or less, but you can kind of figure out what your boundaries are. And so if it is more or less, you can, take 2 CSAs together, and that becomes like your geography. So thinking about really understanding what scale you want to look at for either your own work or for kind of that exploratory. Thank you, Cheryl, for putting the planning department's dashboard in there for neighborhood related data.
And then before you go on to the next demonstration, Michael and I'm adding myself onto his question. I wanted to make sure
you get priority. You get prerogative.
I wanted to make sure that all of these sessions are being recorded and shared, because I would love to participate in tomorrow's, but I'm not able to. I would love to hear more about Armand's work.
Yep, everything's recorded, and it's going to be both on the Data Day main page and on our YouTube channel. And I think Logan can pop those into the chat.
Great.
All right. To real estate information. And we're going to go back to our main website. Let me get there. All right. And actually, I have a quick presentation to talk about real estate, and maybe everybody's favorite topic, or maybe not. I don't know, but it's definitely one of my favorite topics. So let us slideshow from the beginning, and I'm going to do the full screen share. Okay. So for those that don't know, so a little bit about myself, I guess. I came to Baltimore City in 2005 under the O'Malley administration, way back when. And I was the chief of research for the planning department. That's my first job here in Baltimore. And one of the first things that I was tasked to do was to figure out if we want to project the population in the city of Baltimore, we can look at what kind of development is happening in the city of Baltimore and assume that some kind of percentage of people would be occupying these kind of developments. And so it was a pretty simple question. Give me all of the real estate development projects that are in the pipeline in the city of Baltimore. Well, in 2005, it just didn't exist. It just didn't exist. It was in people's minds. People knew that this development was going to happen and this development was going to happen, and communities kind of sort of knew. And it was very, very hard and challenging to keep track. So when I came to the University of Baltimore in 2011, I have the great privilege of overseeing the Real Estate and Economic Development program, which is an undergraduate degree here at the university. And I have students that are curious about real estate. And I just thought we need to create some way to actually track all of these things that are happening in neighborhoods for everybody to keep track of development. And development isn't a one-time thing, right? If any of you are developers or have been part of the development process, you know that things can change from idea to actual building permit and construction. You might have an idea of having 40 units on a particular parcel, but by the time it makes it through the process of site design and architectural review and egress, ingress, all that stuff, it might have gone from 40 units to 32 units, or whatever kind of the sausage making that happens through the development process. And it's very challenging for communities to really understand and follow all of the things that might be happening in their neighborhood and how those changes might be happening. So you might think you see a presentation about a development, and then 6 months later, it actually looks kind of different, but it looks kind of different, not just willy-nilly, but it went through the development review process. And so that's what I want to talk about. And that's what the Baltimore Pipeline is all about, because as neighborhoods continuously change with respect to development, we have to be able to help neighborhoods keep track of these things. So the development review process, for those that are not familiar, if you do want to build, especially major developments, we have lots of different reviews. We have zoning review, potentially, if you're changing the zoning. We have historic preservation review, if you're potentially developing in a historic neighborhood, or you have a historically significant building. We have design and architectural advisory review, which is if the building that you're going to build is going to have an architectural stamp or impact on a neighborhood. And then of course we have the Planning Commission, which looks at, does the particular development follow the city's comprehensive master plan, among other things. So unless you have a full-time job following these things, it is very challenging for neighborhoods to know that a project went from zoning, and then it went to historic preservation, and then it went to architectural design. And some of you might sit on committees for your neighborhood to attempt to try and keep track of this. And this is kind of the periodicity of all of the meetings that go on. And I'm sure for some of you, this is either completely familiar or completely unfamiliar, but the BMZA, which is the zoning appeals, meets every other Tuesday. The docket is released 2 weeks in advance, if we're lucky. UDAP meets every other Thursday. It's an open meeting, but not exactly a public hearing. So you really have to kind of be on the lookout to know what's on the UDAP hearing. CHAP happens once a month. That agenda is released, and it is a public hearing where people can give testimony. And the Planning Commission meets every other Thursday on the opposite time of UDART. So again, this is what professionals do to move projects through the system. And the process is really challenging because not every project goes through everything. So it's not like every project has to go through all of these reviews. You could just go from CHAP straight to approval. You could go from CHAP, you could go from your site plan review to the BMZA to UDAP to Planning Commission, and then finally even to City Council. Sometimes there's ordinances that we have to look at with respect to rezonings or planned unit developments. And so again, a particular project can kind of travel through any and all of these reviews. So we basically saw that we can catch these things as they move through these reviews by really tracking the agendas. The agendas actually become a source of data. The agendas are public, but they're not in any kind of database. And so we wanted to create a system with my students. In 2011, several of my real estate students actually created the database design and then created the database application, which now is going strong after 10 years. Creating a database from an agenda is a whole different data science process. These are Word documents. They're not something that go directly into any kind of database So the good thing is that it's not a high volume. Like on an agenda, you can have 5 or 6 items, if maybe, and maybe even less, and you're going to convert that into a database. So that's what we created, a relational database based on the name of the project as well as the location, and having a centralized location was the key. And all of our students enter in data into the database, again, that they created. All these fields were things that they realized that they had to create. And it goes onto a map, which I'm going to show you. And that's what came out, is called the Baltimore Pipeline. And this is the link to the Baltimore Pipeline. And I'm gonna go and start to share that. If I can get there. All right, so this is the Baltimore Pipeline, and I'm going to give a demo of that. So there, I'm going to start from the beginning. The pipeline, oops, let's go home. Okay, there's 2 parts of the pipeline, and there's a video. If you, a video within a video, that's very meta. There's 2 parts of the pipeline. One is the public access, and then the subscribers access. The public access is everything in the city of Baltimore. The subscriber access gives way more details about the actual project for the bigger project. So for things that are of significance, and not just in the city of Baltimore, but in the counties as well, this entire region. So we'll start off with the public access. And the purpose of the pipeline is to really help you see what is on review in your neighborhood in the next week or 2. This gets updated every week. It was just updated this morning. Our former student, she graduated, Brittany McMullen, is the one that drives this thing right now. But Logan used to do it before her. And so we've had several students working on this before. So when you come to the interactive side on this public side, you'll see what is on the docket for BMZA on August 2nd. So like I said, the docket comes out 2 weeks in advance. So you can come in here. If you live in Fells Point, you can see, 1621 Lancaster Street is going to create a parking pad in the rear yard. And maybe that's of interest to you, or whatever else is going on in different parts of town. Many of these are relatively minor. If you have an existing multifamily unit, you have to continue that multifamily unit. And so you have to go to the BMCA to continue something that was already there. And so that is one example here on Poplar Grove. But you can also then go back in time and see what has happened in the last month. So you can see all of the different kinds of reviews that have happened, maybe in your neighborhood or in a particular section of town. So this is BMZA. Planning Commission is this little what is the Greek Roman columns? What is that called? So on Gilmore Street on July 12th, there was a request for construction of a 2nd-story rear addition. And this had to go to historic preservation review because of the nature of the building that it is. You can see for Planning Commission on July 6th, the Nathaniel J. McFadden Live and Learn and Play Park had, what was going on here? To construct the new park. So it went to Planning Commission in order to get that approval. And then for UDAP, let's see. For those of you that are living in the Northeast, you can see that on June 23rd, there was a schematic design for 4511 Harford Road. You can also see all of these as a downloadable database, basically an Excel spreadsheet with all of the information for the 55 that we just filtered on. You can also turn off things. You can say, I don't really care about BMZA. I really just want to look at the bigger stuff. BMZA can be very, very small kind of administrative things that have to get done. And that's why they end up on the BMZA docket. And so this is where we are in terms of the bigger things. So that is the basic idea. You can do a neighborhood overlay, so you can zoom into different neighborhoods. If you want to take a look at kind of a specific area of time. One of the interesting things about this database now that is now 10 years old is you can see the kinds of things that people have to do. So notice BMZA tends to be the thing that happens everywhere. The brighter icons are the ones that are in the future. The duller ones are the ones that are in the past. But notice in terms of year to date, how many BMZA docket items there are. Very tough to really keep track of. And that's why this is here every week updated where you can see the 327 so far this year, and we're only halfway through. Before the new zoning code got, adopted, before the new zoning code got adopted in 2018, 2019, this map was even worse. It had thousands of BMCA requests for zoning appeals, and the zoning code really brought that down. So that's one kind of analysis that you can do with this data set. All right, so let's turn it to the, so when you click on any one particular, you can see a little bit of the history, although this history isn't that interesting. But let me go to maybe something in the past that has gone through that 4511 Harford Road. You can see that the first time that it's entered our database was this June 23rd, 2022 for architectural design. So this might be the beginning of a process that this particular project is going on. And so if you want to learn more, and we get lots of small developers, construction folks that are interested in the things that are coming online. We also actually have the school system subscribing to the pipeline. We have the planning department, we have the Baltimore subscribing, because they all want to know in one place what is happening in all of our neighborhoods. So they all subscribe. And subscription is pretty cheap. It's $295 a year to actually get to some of these deeper, more information. So this now is more regional. You can see things that are going on in the greater Baltimore region in terms of larger projects. And you can filter for whatever you want. You can look at who the developer is. You can look at what the source of the data was. You can look at, if you just want to look at residential, or if you want to look at industrial, if you want to look at affordable housing, you can come in here and kind of filter accordingly. And you can kind of get what you want in terms of the kinds of projects that you want to look at. And in here are what we would call the more major projects. Like it won't have, continuing use as a daycare, which is a BMCA thing. It'll have the bigger projects in here. So now when you click on it, the Avalon Bay, you can get information about who the architect is, or what the value of the project is, and or if there was a little bit of history. And I'm trying to get to a project where there's a little bit of history, which I should have preloaded. Let's see. Nope. But if there is multiple things that might have been going on, you would see that this particular project has had several different reviews in the database. So I can't find one quickly, but that's the idea of the Baltimore Pipeline, is to help you keep track of different projects. You can obviously download this as a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet for whatever you filtered on. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so what are my questions, if any?
Yes. So yes, related to what you just shared, and then there's a question taking us back a little bit, but I'll start with what you just shared. Are dropped projects represented in the data set still? Are we tracking that?
What do you mean by drop? Like, oh, that they never actually happened?
Yeah.
So the next step is to take all of these in the pipeline projects and connect it to an actual permit. Was a permit pulled for that project? And we've done that once in a while. We actually had some Georgetown students connect these projects to the permit file. The vast majority of them do happen. eventually, right? So some of them take a very long time. But because you're in these review processes, these developers have put money in the game. There's skin in the game here. This is not the pipe dream. This is the pipeline. So they are actually putting money in, architectural design. They're putting money in the review process. And so that's why the likelihood is going to happen that they're actually going to come to fruition. But some of our projects take a very long time. And so our Georgetown students connected it to the permit data, and 90% of them do occur within the 1 or 2 years. And in fact, a pretty big chunk, and I forget the percentage, it was something like 65 or 70%, actually happened within 90 days where a permit is pulled, because time is money for developers. And so they want to start the review process as quickly and get through it as quickly as possible so they can get their permit. Which was pretty surprising that 90 days was a pretty good chunk of the projects that went through the process to get a permit. Baltimore City is actually relatively quick if you know what you're doing. And we actually found that too, that there are some developers and their agents that were very fast through the process. So if you get a really good shepherd through this, you can make it through the review process really quickly. Because you have to get on the agenda. Like if you have to go through all these reviews, you have to get on this Thursday and next Thursday and hope nothing went wrong. And in the terms of nothing went wrong, I don't know if anybody's ever been to a planning commission meeting or a chat meeting, but when the community is unaware of a project, that's exactly what can delay a developer too, because the community will come to the hearing, hopefully, and say, we don't know anything about this project, you need to slow down. And that's exactly what a developer doesn't want. And so if this actually is something that communities use, they can see what's on the pipeline, and we should encourage developers to tell people to come to the pipeline and let communities know what's happening, not just with their project, but other projects too.
Also, suggestion for city agencies to possibly use this and see who hasn't maybe, well, no, I guess that doesn't quite make the connection just yet, but instead of putting all of the responsibility on communities in those cases, there should be, you don't get to a hearing without having community conversations first. But that's me speaking from a community perspective. So taking us back to the guidepost, there was a question about how neighborhoods can use this data for the proposed police redistricting.
Let me mull on that for 1 second, because let me just show you one thing that happens if you are a subscriber to the pipeline. Every week you actually get an email about what the new projects are. So today I got this email that there are 2 new projects in the pipeline that I might be interested in: the Service Center apartments up on Howard Street and an expansion of Peabody Apartments on West 27th Street. So that's literally hot off the presses. So that's what a subscription will get you, these weekly emails and access to the database.
And
okay, so
the Peabody Apartments has been in constant communication with the community. So.
Excellent. Okay, so the guidepost helping with police redistricting, I'm not sure. I can't think quickly about that, but hopefully the vital signs data in general will be able to help you with police redistricting. And let me, I don't know if Cheryl has a quicker thought than me, but let me show you my quick thought, on the fly thought. All of our indicators on the vital signs report are available in a wide variety of ways. So let's say in terms of police, you want to look at Part 1 crime. And we want to distribute kind of high crime areas with low crime areas so that the districts have a broad range. You can come in here with Part 1 crime and look, we have every single indicator that we have on the vital signs has this kind of landing page, tells you where we got it, tells you what it is, and then the years that we have it for. And you can look at the data in terms of just tabular data. So we see where we have these high crime areas in terms of Part 1 crime incidents. We can look at, where we have, the variation or the disparity in this particular case of Part 1 crime. You can look at trends. So if we were to think about different parts of town, you know, if you see an increasing trend in part 1 crime, you may want to make sure that that's not in the same district as a place where you have decreasing, or however the calculus is being made. And then finally, you want to look at the map. So this is a part 1 crime. You can see we have concentrations of high rates of part 1 crime pretty much in the center of town. Downtown, Harbor East, Little Italy, and Pigtown have some of the highest rates. And this might be counterintuitive to you, right? We think about neighborhoods of high distress as having high crime, but that's actually not exactly true, because you need something in some cases where you have a lot of tourists, where you have a lot of people. That's where we tend to get the most incidents, or I should say the most reported incidents, right? We might have crime out here that's not being reported, and so they are not showing up on the map.
Yeah, so I do know that the police, they're taking into account, obviously, locations of things like violent crime and property crime, obviously looking at some trend data. But one of the other things that I think is also kind of crucial for this type of process, and this goes for, you know, redrawing the police districts or any sort of other districting as well, is especially thinking about population change. So we have been thinking very intensely about the past decade in Baltimore. So earlier this year, we focused on the Baltimore Community Change Project. So thinking about where, in the case of BPD, officers and other resources are being allocated. So communities that have had decreases in population, there's not as many people living there. So they might need to shift some of the resources to areas that have higher need. So patrolling communities that have higher rates of crime, but then also thinking about, well, where are people living, where are businesses located, so that they can make sure that with whatever responses they have, it's appropriate, and making sure that their resources are being best utilized. So Seema is showing here this Baltimore Community Change Project. So yes, very intentionally thinking about the variations in neighborhoods across time. We've been trying to be really consistent with at BNIA how we report a lot of data using these community statistical areas, but it's incredibly important to think about how Baltimore has changed and morphed over time. Communities and neighborhoods are made of people, and we definitely know through the data and through, you know, just lived experiences, communities change, they're vibrant, and being able to capture those changes and that vibrancy in data is incredibly important for any planning process.
So Michael, I invite you to join us on Friday when we review the Baltimore Community Change Project and go over that presentation. And for now, there's actually a whole open data portal on all of the data. So you can actually look at the rate of change in crime if you come into here and look at our Tableau dashboard. But we're going to go into a deeper dive on this site on Friday. But I did want to just close out before, if there are, just to focus on the business stuff, if there aren't any questions on that Baltimore Data Week still going on, obviously, after today. Thursday, if you are interested in understanding how we create these indicators, come here, Herman, tomorrow at 3:15. And then we are going to be talking about the Baltimore Community Change Project on Friday in the morning. So hopefully we can see you there. We do have a survey for you all today before you leave. Cheryl just popped that in the chat. If you could tell us your opinion of your experiences so far with Baltimore Data Week. If today was the first time you came, you can tell us about that. The link kind of gives you a way to answer a couple of survey evaluation questions. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Kristina, see if there's any more questions.
I currently am not seeing any additional questions, but if anyone has any final comments or questions that they'd like to share, please feel free to put them in the chat. Typically, I come with a million questions, but as I was jotting things down to ask, they were being answered and responded to. So for now, I just would love to thank all of our presenters today. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Seema. Thank you, Lamontre. I really appreciate everyone spending this afternoon diving deeper into some very important information, very important platforms, and really excited to start working with them myself. So if there is nothing else, we might be ending a little early today. So I'm going to give everyone back another 30 minutes of your day. Please go and be productive and enjoy the rest of your day.